It was supposed to be just another ordinary spring afternoon, the kind where the world feels almost magical. The sun hung lazily in the sky, painting golden streaks across our backyard as I twirled around in my favorite pink dress, pretending to be a princess from one of Mom's bedtime stories. My giggles filled the air, blending with the sweet scent of blooming flowers that drifted through the breeze. For 5-year-old me, life was simple, beautiful, and safe, or so I thought. That illusion shattered when Richard Hale stepped into my world. He came out of nowhere like a shadow creeping over sunlight. I remember seeing his black van idling near the curb, its side door slightly open like an invitation. At first, I didn't think much of it. Vans weren't unusual on our street. But then he appeared, a man with sharp eyes and a smile that felt wrong, like something sticky and fake glued onto his face. His voice was smooth, too practiced, as he crouched down to my level. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said, tilting his head like he knew me. "I've got some puppies in my van. Special ones. They need a little girl like you to take care of them. Would you like to see?" Puppies. The word alone made my heart race with excitement. I loved animals more than anything, stuffed ones, real ones, even the imaginary ones I talked to during playtime. So when he held out his hand, I hesitated for only a moment before taking a step closer. It wasn't until I felt his fingers close tightly around my wrist that I realized something was terribly wrong. His grip wasn't gentle or kind, it was cold, unyielding, like a vice trapping me. Fear exploded inside me, but it wasn't the kind of fear you can scream about. No, this was deeper, heavier, like invisible chains wrapping around my throat, stealing my voice. Mom had been watching me from the kitchen window just moments earlier, her lips curved into a soft smile as she prepared dinner. But then her phone rang, a call from Aunt Lisa, as she turned away for what should have been no more than 4 minutes. 4 minutes. That's all it took for my entire world to unravel. Thankfully, fate intervened in the form of Martha Jenkins, our elderly neighbor. She was walking her terrier across the street when she saw everything unfold. Her voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Hey, get away from that child!" she shouted, her tone fierce despite her age. Hale froze, his confidence wavering for the briefest second. And in that split second, I found enough strength to yank my arm free and run toward Mom, who scooped me up just as the van's engine roared to life. Tires screeched against the pavement as Hale sped off, leaving behind nothing but black streaks of rubber and the lingering stench of danger. But escaping him didn't mean escaping the nightmare. In the days that followed, silence became my prison. Words, once so easy to spill out like water from a cup, now felt impossible to reach. Every time I tried to speak, it was as if an invisible wall stood between me and the outside world. Toys that used to bring me joy now sat untouched in the corner of my room. Even my beloved stuffed bunny couldn't comfort me anymore. Nightmares haunted my sleep, their dark tendrils pulling me back into that terrifying moment with Hale. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, unable to cry out for help because the fear still gripped me tight. My parents were desperate, trying everything they could think of to bring me back. Story time, treats, cuddles, nothing worked. Their little chatterbox had vanished, replaced by a shell of the girl I used to be. They didn't know how to fix me, and neither did I. All I knew was that the world suddenly felt too big, too loud, too scary. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the face of the man who almost stole me away forever. The days following the attack were a blur of despair for Sarah and David Carter. Emily, their once vibrant chatterbox, had retreated into a shell so impenetrable it felt like she was slipping away from them one silent moment at a time. They tried everything storybooks with her favorite characters. The stuffed bunny she used to sleep with every night, even baking cookies together, but nothing seemed to reach her. She sat in silence, her green eyes wide but hollow, as if haunted by an invisible specter that no one else could see. Nights were worse. When darkness fell, Emily's small body would stiffen under the weight of nightmares. Her lips trembled, but no sound escaped, not even a whimper. The world outside became terrifying. Cars passing by sent her scurrying behind furniture, and strangers' faces made her flinch. It was as though fear itself had taken root inside her, growing stronger with each passing day. Dr. LeVar Bennett's name came up during one of their desperate late-night research sessions on trauma therapies. A specialist in animal-assisted therapy, Dr. Bennett had worked miracles before with children who suffered similar fates. When Sarah called, explaining Emily's condition, the doctor suggested introducing a support dog trained specifically for cases involving severe emotional trauma. Sometimes, Dr. Bennett said gently, a child can find trust in ways we never expect. The Carters hesitated. Could another living being truly bridge the chasm between their daughter and the rest of the world? But what choice did they have? With each passing week, Emily grew quieter, more distant. So they agreed to meet Rex, a German shepherd whose own scars told stories of battles fought and survived. When they arrived at Dr. Bennett's rehabilitation center, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and earthy fur. Rex lay on a large orthopedic bed near the window, his deep brown eyes tracking every movement with quiet intensity. His jagged scar ran along his flank, a stark reminder of the night he'd sacrificed himself to save a kidnapped child years ago. To anyone unfamiliar, he might have appeared intimidating. And indeed, when Emily first saw him, her tiny frame froze, then shrank back behind her mother's legs. Rex didn't move. Instead, he simply watched her, his presence steady and unthreatening, as if he understood the fragile thread holding her together. Dr. Bennett knelt beside Emily, speaking softly. "This is Rex. He's very gentle, sweetheart. He's here to help you feel safe again." Emily didn't respond, but she didn't run either. That was progress? Slowly, over weeks of visits, Rex began building trust with her. He never rushed or forced interaction. If Emily wanted to sit quietly across the room, Rex waited patiently. If she ventured closer, he remained still until she touched him. Each small gesture, a hesitant pat on his head, a brush against his fur, was met with calm reassurance. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. It was raining outside, the rhythmic patter of drops against the window filling the otherwise silent room. Emily sat cross-legged on the floor, her fingers tracing the scar along Rex's side. She often did this now, as though memorizing its shape somehow connected her to him. Suddenly, without warning, she leaned forward slightly, her voice barely audible. "Good boy." For a moment, Sarah thought she imagined it. But then she turned, tears already streaming down her face, and saw Emily staring at Rex with something resembling wonder. Those two words were like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. They signaled hope, tentative but undeniable. Rex tilted his head slightly as if acknowledging her praise, and nudged her hand gently. Emily smiled, a real smile for the first time since the abduction attempt. In that single moment, something shifted. The wall Emily had built around herself cracked just enough to let someone in. For Rex, it wasn't about training or instinct. It was about connection. He had waited patiently, giving her space while offering unwavering loyalty. And now, finally, Emily had begun to trust again, not just him, but perhaps the possibility of finding her way back to herself. The courtroom was a pressure cooker of tension, the air thick with unspoken fears and whispered speculations. Every seat in the gallery was filled, journalists scribbling notes, family members gripping each other's hands, and legal observers leaning forward as if afraid to miss a single detail. At the center of it all sat Emily Carter, her tiny frame dwarfed by the imposing wooden chair on the witness stand. Her fingers clutched Rex's leash like a lifeline, her knuckles white from the effort. The German shepherd sat beside her, his presence both a shield and a silent promise that she wasn't alone. When Richard Hale entered the room, escorted by bailiffs, Emily froze. Her green eyes locked onto him, wide with terror, as though the mere sight of him had transported her back to that fateful day in their backyard. Sarah, seated behind her daughter, felt her heart lurch at the sight of Emily trembling. She wanted nothing more than to rush forward and pull her child into her arms, but she knew this moment was crucial, not just for justice, but for Emily's healing. Jenna Collins, the lead prosecutor, approached gently, her voice soft yet firm. "Emily," she began, kneeling so she could meet the child's gaze directly, "can you tell us who was with you in your yard that day?" For what felt like an eternity, Emily didn't move. Her breathing grew shallow, her small chest rising and falling rapidly. Then, slowly, her hand twitched, a subtle signal only Rex understood. It was a gesture they had practiced during therapy sessions, one meant to communicate fear or recognition without words. To anyone else it might have seemed insignificant, but Rex reacted instantly. His body went rigid, his golden brown eyes narrowing into slits as he focused intently on Hale. A low, guttural growl rumbled deep within his chest, reverberating through the tense silence of the courtroom. The reaction sent shockwaves through the room. Whispers erupted among the spectators, some leaning closer to get a better look while others exchanged bewildered glances. Judge Sullivan leaned forward, his sharp blue eyes narrowing thoughtfully. He hadn't anticipated such a visceral response from Rex, and it was clear that something profound had just occurred. Without hesitation, he brought down his gavel with a resounding crack. "This court will take a 15-minute recess," he declared, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. As the courtroom emptied, chaos simmered beneath the surface. Prosecutors huddled urgently, discussing Rex's behavior and its implications. Meanwhile, Richard Hale sat stiffly at the defense table, his earlier composure shattered. His fingers drummed incessantly against the polished wood, betraying his growing anxiety. Michael Graves, his lawyer, tried to calm him, whispering reassurances, but Hale barely heard them. His mind raced, replaying the moment when Rex had growled low, menacing, unmistakable. That dog knew him. And now, for the first time since the trial began, doubt crept into his carefully constructed facade. Hale's thoughts spiraled. Had the dog encountered him before? Was there evidence tying him to something he hadn't considered? He clenched his fists tightly, his knuckles turning pale. For weeks, he had relied on his defense strategy: discredit Emily's testimony due to her selective mutism and lack of physical evidence. But now, with Rex's primal reaction casting suspicion over him, cracks were beginning to form in his armor. In the hallway outside, Emily clung to Rex, her face buried in his fur. Sarah knelt beside her, brushing strands of curly hair away from her daughter's forehead. "You're doing so well, sweetheart," she murmured, though her own voice trembled. Detective Jack Monroe stood nearby, observing silently. His instincts told him that Rex's growl wasn't random, it was confirmation. Something about Hale triggered the dog, and Monroe intended to find out what. Back inside the courtroom, Judge Sullivan reviewed the prosecution's request for further investigation. The stakes had shifted dramatically. What had started as a fragile case reliant on a traumatized child's word now carried the weight of Rex's undeniable reaction. As the recess ended and the trial resumed, the atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation. Everyone in the room knew that something monumental had unfolded, and whatever it was, it would change the course of the trial forever. The morning air was sharp and biting as Detective Jack Monroe led the search team into the dense forest, their breaths visible in the frosty light. The coordinates had been precise thanks to the soil samples found in Richard Hale's ven, and every step closer to the cabin felt like walking deeper into a nightmare. Rex, Emily's steadfast protector, trotted ahead of the group, his movements tense, his golden brown eyes scanning the surroundings with an intensity that bordered on primal. It wasn't just his training guiding him now. It was something far more visceral. As they approached the clearing where the cabin stood, Rex's reaction confirmed what everyone feared. His body stiffened, muscles coiling beneath his scarred coat. A low growl rumbled from his chest, growing louder with each passing second. "This place," Monroe muttered under his breath, his hand resting instinctively on his weapon. "Rex knows something's here." The cabin itself was a decrepit structure, its wooden walls warped by time and neglect. The porch sagged under years of disrepair, and the windows were dark, like empty sockets staring back at them. But it wasn't the exterior that sent chills down their spines. It was the faint scent of desperation that clung to the air, heavy and suffocating. Rex began pacing anxiously at the threshold, his tail rigid, ears perked forward. He let out another guttural growl, this one sharper, more urgent. Inside, the team moved cautiously, flashlights cutting through the thick shadows. At first glance, the cabin appeared abandoned: a rickety table, a cot covered in dust and a pile of empty food cans stacked haphazardly in the corner. But then Monroe noticed something, a faint seam along the wooden floor near the back wall. Kneeling down, he knocked lightly. The hollow sound echoed ominously. "There's something under here," he announced, his voice tight with anticipation. With swift precision, officers pried the boards loose, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. Descending into the basement felt like stepping into another world, one devoid of hope or mercy. The air grew colder, damp and oppressive, clinging to their skin like a second layer. As their flashlights illuminated the space, the true horror unfolded before them. Toys lay scattered across the dirt floor, their colors faded but still recognizable. Shoes too small to belong to anyone but a child sat abandoned beside a pink backpack embroidered with butterflies. And then, in the farthest corner, chained to the wall like an animal, was Emma Sullivan. Emma was barely recognizable. Her once bright eyes were sunken, her face pale and gaunt. The chain around her neck gleamed dully in the dim light, a cruel reminder of the months she had spent trapped in this hellish existence. For a moment she didn't react, her gaze distant, as if she no longer believed rescue was possible. Then, seeing the uniforms and hearing Monroe's soothing voice, "You're safe now," her defenses crumbled. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her frail body trembling uncontrollably as she sobbed, her cries breaking the silence like shards of glass. Rex, who had waited anxiously outside, strained against his leash when he heard Emma's cries. His whining grew frantic, his entire body quivering with distress. Monroe understood. It was as though Rex could sense the depth of Emma's suffering, connecting it to the fear he'd seen in Emily's eyes months earlier. "It's okay, boy," Monroe murmured, though his own voice cracked with emotion. "We've got her." Back at the lab, forensic analysis confirmed the worst suspicions. The soil samples matched perfectly with those found in Hale's van, and DNA evidence lifted from the chains tied directly to him. But it was Rex's behavior that sealed the connection. From the moment they arrived at the cabin, he had acted as though Hale himself were present, his reactions so intense they bordered on supernatural. Investigators theorized that Hale must have visited the cabin frequently enough to leave behind traces of his presence, traces only Rex could detect. For Monroe, the discovery solidified everything he'd suspected about Hale. This wasn't just a predator. It was someone who thrived on control, on breaking the spirits of innocent children. And now, thanks to Rex's instincts and Emily's silent courage, justice finally had a chance to prevail. The courtroom was a crucible of tension, the air crackling with anticipation as Richard Hale sat slumped at the defense table. Gone was the composed facade he had clung to throughout the trial. Now his face was pale and drawn, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool temperature inside. The weight of irrefutable evidence pressed down upon him like an invisible hand-soil samples from his van tied directly to Emma Sullivan's captivity, DNA linking him to the chains that bound her neck, and Rex's visceral reactions cementing every accusation against him. But it wasn't just the evidence that broke him, it was the presence of Rex himself. As the final day of testimony unfolded, Jenna Collins called one last witness, Detective Jack Monroe, who recounted in chilling detail how Rex had led investigators to the cabin where Emma had been held captive. With each word, Hale's mask crumbled further, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the edge of the table. Then came the moment that shattered him completely. Rex entered the courtroom, guided gently by Emily. His golden-brown eyes scanned the room with predatory intensity before locking onto Hale. Slowly, deliberately, he began to walk toward him, his claws clicking softly against the tiled floor. Every movement seemed calculated, every step echoing through the silent chamber. Hale froze, his breathing erratic, his chest rising and falling rapidly. When Rex stopped mere feet away, his gaze piercing and unyielding, something snapped within Hale. "Stop!" he blurted out, his voice cracking under the strain. "I'll tell you everything, I'll confess." His lawyer shot to his feet, protesting vehemently, but it was too late. The dam had burst. Hale's confession spilled forth in a torrent of desperation, detailing not only the abduction of Emma Sullivan but also several other unsolved cases involving missing children. He spoke of meticulously planned kidnappings, of exploiting vulnerabilities, of inflicting psychological torment for no reason other than his own twisted satisfaction. Each admission sent ripples of shock through the gallery, gasps escaping from those seated closest to the proceedings. When Hale finally finished speaking, his head hung low, shoulders trembling. Judge Sullivan looked down at him, his expression devoid of pity. "Richard Hale," he intoned gravely, "you are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." The gavel fell with a resounding crack, sealing Hale's fate forever. For Emily, justice delivered meant more than closure. It marked the beginning of her true recovery. In the weeks following the verdict, she began to find her voice again, tentatively at first but growing stronger with each passing day. Sarah noticed small victories everywhere. Emily humming softly while coloring, laughing at cartoons on TV, even asking if they could take Rex to the park. One afternoon, as the sun filtered through their living room window, Emily sat beside Rex on the couch, her arms wrapped tightly around his neck. She leaned close, her lips brushing against his ear, and whispered two simple yet profound words: "Thank you." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she watched the scene unfold. For months, she had feared losing her daughter to the darkness that had consumed her after the attack. But now, seeing Emily smile again, seeing her connect so deeply with Rex, filled her with gratitude she couldn't put into words. David joined them, placing a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. "You're brave, sweetheart," he said softly. "Braver than anyone I know." Rex seemed to understand the significance of the moment. He nudged Emily gently with his nose, eliciting a giggle from her, a sound that felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. It was proof that healing wasn't linear, nor was it instantaneous. But with time, love, and unwavering loyalty, wounds could begin to mend. As the family embraced, Rex lying contentedly at their feet, there was a quiet sense of triumph in the air. Evil had been confronted, justice served, and hope restored, not just for Emily, but for everyone whose lives had been touched by Hale's crimes. And though scars would remain, they were reminders not of fear, but of resilience. Rex was more than a support dog. He was a symbol of resilience, loyalty, and hope. His jagged scar told a story of sacrifice, a reminder that even those who bear the weight of past wounds can rise to protect others. For Emily, Rex became both shield and confidant, his unwavering presence pulling her out of the suffocating silence that had consumed her after the attack. It wasn't just his training or instincts that made him extraordinary, it was his ability to connect on a level deeper than words. When Emily traced the scar along his side with trembling fingers, it was as if she understood his pain and he hers. Together they formed an unbreakable bond, one that defied fear and darkness. That bond proved transformative. The trust Emily placed in Rex allowed her to take tentative steps toward recovery. Her first whispered thank you to him marked not only her return to speech, but also a triumph over the trauma that had nearly stolen her voice forever. Their relationship became living proof that healing often begins with something as simple as believing in oneself, in another being, or in the possibility of safety once again. But Rex's role extended beyond emotional support. In the courtroom, his primal reactions unveiled truths no human testimony could fully capture. His growl wasn't merely instinct, it was recognition, a visceral response to evil that left no room for denial. Rex didn't need documents or DNA reports. His senses bore witness to Hale's crimes, making him an irrefutable piece of evidence. In the end, this story stood as a testament to courage and unity. Whether through Emily's fragile bravery, Rex's steadfast loyalty, or Emma's miraculous rescue, justice prevailed because good refused to yield. Even in the darkest moments when despair seemed insurmountable, there were always guardians, human and animal alike, ready to fight against cruelty. And so, amidst shattered lives and mended hearts, the tale of Rex and Emily reminded everyone, no matter how ruthless the world may seem, light will always find its way through the cracks.